Yeah, I only have 9 minutes on the video, so this part I'll have to make some more space. But this is the timeline that I put together while we were finishing that Alamo video. But this shows the entire Texas Revolution up through 1835. So I want y'all to copy this down. And I'll go through each of these items. The lead up to the revolution really starts with this Mexican Constitution of 1824, okay? So I want you to put it in order just like this. And if you want, you can put this second half here underneath the first half if you like that visually better, because 1835 follows 1834. However you want to do that.
Can I not do a line and just do it like 1824?
All the way down, yeah. That's what I mean. You can take this half here that I've divided and just put it under here on your notes. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the reason the Mexican Constitution was important, you got to keep in mind the context here. Mexico had just gained its independence from Spain in 1821. Okay, and so this was their first constitution, and it was modeled after the U.S. Republic. They had a federation. It was a Mexican. It was the United States of Mexico. Okay, it was Estados Unidos de Mexico. That was what it was. And they modeled their constitution very much on the U.S. Constitution in 1824. It was a federal system. They had distributed the power to the states, a lot of the power, and they had a central government in Mexico City, but it was, there was a lot of checks and balances on the power of the central government. So that's how we started. And this is an important kind of touchstone in history that we're going to come back to, this Mexican Constitution of 1824. Because later we're going to see that this was repealed, this was rescinded by Santa Anna and the Centralists, who wanted to basically consolidate power in Mexico City and make the central government much more powerful. And it led to a bunch of insurrections throughout Mexico, not just in Texas, but other states, other Mexican states. Okay? One of the other side notes of this constitution was it established a new state called Coahuila y Tejas. So it basically lumped Texas together with Coahuila and created a new province with a capital in Saltillo, Mexico, which is further south than San Antonio. So it changed the capital of Texas from San Antonio to Saltillo, because now there's this huge province with Tejas y Coahuila, and so basically it made the capital of the province, the capital of the state, further away. It was hard, Stephen F. Austin, for instance, he had to go all the way to Saltillo to get his license to start his impresario grant, okay, to start settling Texas. He couldn't just go to San Antonio anymore, okay? So the next big development is in the Mexican Constitution, and then later in 1829, 5 years later, they started to crack down on slavery in these years, and by 1829, they had officially outlawed slavery in Mexico. And this was a big deal because by then, many of the colonists of Texas were Anglo settlers from the south, and they did bring slaves with them. Many of them did bring slaves. And so this was a big deal for the Texans, the Texan colonists, because they were pro-slavery, okay? I mean, and so this was a big sticking point with them, and a reason why they started wanting to rebel. Okay. 1830, immigration from the U.S. to Texas is banned. The Mexicans by this point are getting really nervous about these Anglo colonists, and they want to put an end to it because they get the feeling that these Texan colonists are most likely wanting to stage a rebellion. And they're right, because only a few years later we have the fighting beginning. Okay. But by banning immigration from the U.S., this really added to the list of grievances that the Texas colonists had. They also added tariffs on U.S. imports. So that means that there was a tax on any goods coming across the border into Texas from the U.S. And a lot of these goods, the colonists depended on a lot of these goods.
What does that say?
Because
To
there was
Texas, the harm?
banned.
Oh.
Immigration from U.S. to Texas is banned. So Evan, what's a tariff again?
A tax.
On what kind of tax?
Goods. They're like.
It's a tax on
stuff that-
imports.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a specific type of tax. It's a tax on imports. Okay, so all of these grievances added up. You had slavery, immigration ban, and tariffs. This is starting to create the tension. You guys get it? And by 1832, the settlers are protesting these laws, the laws of 1830. And William Barrett Travis, who was an attorney in Anahuac, okay, is arrested by the Mexican police. So this is known as the Anahuac disturbances. This is like the protests that are going on now in the streets. This was like that. A bunch of people in Anahuac demonstrated in the streets, and one of those people was William Barrett Travis, and he was arrested. Anahuac is over by Houston. Okay, it's near, just east of Houston. Okay, and that's where this happened. And this was one of the first little early signs of the revolution. But no shots were fired. It was kind of a minor incident. 2 years later, fast forward, we've got a newly elected president. Who's the president? Who's the newly elected president, do you think?
Santa Ana.
Santa Ana, okay. And so he came to power as, a federalist, okay? And, he came to power touting the virtues of decentralized government and democracy and all that, and he was elected by the Mexican people. He was a war hero. He had fought in the Mexican War of Independence from Spain. But then, shortly after he was elected, he rescinds the 1824 Constitution in order to consolidate power in Mexico City, and he effectively became a dictator. He pronounced himself, the leader of this centralized government with very little checks on the power, the centralized power, because he basically dissolved the federal system when he repealed this constitution. Just unilaterally made the decision by dictate. That's what a dictator does.